in that bro?
What's going on, guys? Tyler Yasuda here, back again with another video. Crazy, right? It's like 2 videos in 2 weeks or something. But anyway, if you guys want to continue seeing content on this channel, please do me a favor, and if you have ideas for future videos or any suggestions for what I should be making, please drop me a comment down below or shoot me a comment over on Instagram, Tyler Yasuda. Follow me there if you don't already. And yeah, other than that, if you're looking for a coach, if you need some help getting stronger, bigger, more muscular, leaner, healthier, etc., I might be your guy. If you're interested in working with me for coaching, shoot me an email at the email address down below, and we'll talk. Even if I don't get a chance to work with you, I'll hopefully at least send you on your way with a little bit more direction, a little bit more knowledge, so you can continue progressing from there. All right, so imagine a situation where you understand a certain lift, you know what it's supposed to look like, you've seen really high-level athletes perform this lift, and you have that ideal in your head. And for whatever reason, you just can't seem to do it that way. You can't seem to get it right, and it's super frustrating because you've been practicing this lift over and over again for months. I'm sure this has happened to all of us, 8 billion times in our lifting lives, depending on how long you've been training for. So we're gonna address that today. The first possibility is that it could be your proportions. Now, when I say proportions, I'm talking about relative limb lengths or relative lengths of different parts of your body. So it could be like how long or short your torso is in relation to your limbs. It could be how long a portion of your limb, let's say like your femur, is in relation to your shin, etc. Case in point, if you ever watch the Olympics and you see, Olympic weightlifting, you're never really going to see an accomplished athlete in that sport who has like a really short torso and very long limbs. It's always, long torso, really, really short limbs, because that's better for developing and getting into certain positions that you'd want to be in for those lifts. Possibility number 2, it could be your flexibility. So maybe you understand the lift well enough and you understand how to accommodate your proportions, and even then you just can't get into the position. Like, you get stuck on your way in. Let's say you're setting up for a deadlift and you know what your starting position should look like, and you try to shove your hips into place and they just don't go there. They just don't move any further. That would be an example of your flexibility being the limitation. Now, the important thing here is that while your proportions you have no control over, you can't change that, all you can do is accommodate. Your flexibility is something that you can change over time, you can use to hopefully accommodate those proportions. The third thing could be strength. It could just be that you don't have strength in those positions. Now, this would be characterized more so by, let's say you understand how to accommodate your proportions, you have plenty of room, so again, coming back to the sumo, you're able to get into your good starting position, but you can't maintain it. Every single time, as soon as you start applying load, you start to see your hips shoot up and back and your shoulders kind of tip forward out in front of the bar. If you can get in that position, with no load, but you can't maintain it under load, that's probably a good indication that it's just strength in that end range. There's a million other examples we could use, but I'm just coming back to the sumo because I trained sumo a couple days ago. So what can we do to improve our flexibility? First thing, identify where you need more room. So a great starting place would be to try to find your favorite mobility routine. You can look up something like Joe DeFranco's Limber 11. That's where I started. That was my first exposure to like an actual serious mobility routine. And these kind of shotgun routines are a good place to start, because generally what they're going to do is try to address very common issues. So like most of us getting into lifting probably have similar problems. That said, because they are very generalized and it is that kind of shotgun, do everything approach, you probably spend some time doing things that you don't necessarily need and spend less time doing the things that you really do need to focus on. So what I'd encourage you to do is start with a routine, pick one up online somewhere, start doing that routine and start trying to relate the feelings of restriction or tightness in that routine to feelings that you have in the gym. For example, if you're doing like the frog stretch, I'll put up a clip here. If you're doing the frog stretch and you feel this incredible discomfort and tightness in your adductors, like kind of by your groin, and you feel that same sort of tightness as you're trying to reach depth in your squat or as you're trying to get in position for your deadlift, that's a great indication that you might need some more room, some more flexibility in your adductors to improve those positions. You kind of want to figure out what stretches and what drills you can work on to actually address that specific spot or that specific restriction. I'm not going to go over specific drills too much today because there are too many, and again, it kind of varies person to person. But once you identify that restriction, I'm sure you can find 80 different exercises to do. The second thing that is really important about your mobility and your flexibility is that you should stretch with the specific goal of actually increasing your end range. So a lot of times I see people doing like mobility stuff prior to training, and they do just enough to get to a certain point where like they are just mobile enough to squat to death. They do nothing more than that. Now that's fine, but you'll generally get to the same spot every single time and you'll not really make any improvements. So if you're trying to change positions, or if you're trying to improve positioning, it's going to take a little bit more than that. A few general recommendations. I would say that you should stretch when you are stretching or doing drills, bare minimum 30 seconds, but more specifically than that, the routine would go something like this. Again, let's say you're in your rocking frog pose or your frog pose. Get to a point where you feel like you kind of run out of room. Once you're there, try to relax, spend some time there, hang out a little bit, and you'll get to a point where you start to feel a little more comfortable, a little less restricted, and you don't feel so stuck. At that point, you would go ahead and push a little bit further. So maybe in this case, push one of your knees out even further. And then again, you'll feel that, really, really crazy restriction, really incredible discomfort. And then you'll try to chill out there for a bit until you start to feel a little more relaxed, more comfortable. Then again, push further and so on. And rinse and repeat until you feel like you run out of room. Another couple of tricks you can use, one is called PNF stretching. Basically the idea is that while you are in a stretched position, you can actually contract the stretched muscle to get a little bit more out of that. So in the case of the frog pose, I'm stretching my adductors. I can actually contract my adductors, especially in this case because they're actually blocked by the floor. I can't move my femur. By contracting my adductor, I actually lengthen that muscle even more. It is kind of intense and it's kind of a contentious point. Like a lot of people don't encourage PNF stretching anymore because it's kind of aggressive. So take that with a grain of salt. I'm certainly not an expert in flexibility. Another less aggressive idea that you can use is just incorporating a little bit more motion into those stretches. So if you get to that point where you feel like you're sort of stuck, you might start moving around a little bit. So the rocking frog pose, rocking frog stretch that you'll see in like the Limber 11, you'll see in demonstrations, people will kind of move their pelvis forward and back to create a little bit more space. In this clip here, you'll see me rotating my pelvis. So like as I rotate the right side of my pelvis or my right hip down toward the floor, getting a little bit more stretch on that right side. Then as I rotate my left side down to the floor, I'm getting a little more stretch on that left side. This applies to any other of these stretches that you might be doing, but this is just the example that I filmed. Third thing, really, really important here is try to see if you can find a way to measure your progress over time. In my particular example of the frog pose, a great way to measure that would be to literally measure the distance between your knees every time you do this. And ideally every session or every few sessions you should be able to set a new quote-unquote PR, a longer distance there. The fourth thing here is that you should stretch frequently. There's been kind of a lot of research coming out about this in the past year and a half. The conclusion I've drawn from my reading is that you generally will benefit more from more frequency rather than just increasing intensity or increasing duration. So rather than just trying to kill yourself for 30 minutes, maybe break it up into smaller sessions over the course of the day or over the course of multiple days. The thing here is that, let's say you're one of those people who only stretches prior to training. You will probably get to the same point every single time. You'll spend a good deal of time getting to that same baseline flexibility. And then between those sessions, you're probably going to regress a bit. You're going to get less and less flexible until you eventually revisit those stretches, revisit that range of motion, and you'll get back to the same point. Let's say you stretched every single day, or even multiple times a day. You never really lose that flexibility. It's always going to be there, so every time you go through that routine or go through those stretches, you're developing new end range, or you have the opportunity to develop new end range. And that way, when you get to the gym and you're trying to get ready to squat or deadlift or whatever, you don't need to spend as long getting warmed up. So again, rather than spending, half an hour, 45 minutes every fourth, fifth day, it would probably makes more sense to spend just a few minutes at a time, maybe once, twice a day, trying to get those stretches done, trying to improve that end range very slightly every single time. So in the beginning of this video, I mentioned that just because you have enough room to get into a certain position does not mean that you're going to be able to apply strength or apply force there. And that is very true. I don't want to make this video too long like my last one, so I'm going to try to go very briefly over this, and maybe we'll make a future video more specifically about that. But the first thing I would say is that you want to make sure you spend lots of time in that end range. So if you are improving flexibility, you're getting into a new position every time, let's say in the start of your deadlift, you're getting into a new starting position, you got to spend enough time there to become familiar and become strong. So I would say something like a pause deadlift right off the floor, or like a slow tempo deadlift. Something like that would be good for you to accumulate more experience and more practice getting and staying in that position. Second thing would be actually increasing, to a reasonable load in that new position. So once you start actually doing your comp lift or your regular style lift, you want to work really hard. You want to try to make sure you maintain that good position that you've created more room for, and that actually might be your new limit. So you might say in training, like if you notice that you're getting to a weight where consistently you're able to get in position but you can't stay there, you might cap yourself at that weight for a bit, just making sure you're able to do enough reps and actually build some strength with, you know, a reasonable weight in that new position. Because if you keep reverting back to your old position, you won't really make any progress. You won't really produce any change despite your new flexibility. And then the last thing here is that, as with anything, you need to be patient enough to actually improve that flexibility and improve that strength. Too often people will start doing something new and they'll do it for like, you know, a month, and they'll expect to see huge changes. And like, yeah, in a month, that's a good chunk of time actually, but you know, we can't expect overnight change, at least not significant overnight change. So patience is a virtue, as they say. Try to be patient with the changes you're making and do them consistently. Do them diligently, long enough to give them a chance to actually work. That's all I've got for this video, guys. Hopefully this one doesn't turn out to be 20-something minutes like the last one. Like I said, if you have any questions, comments, etc., shoot me a comment down below. Like and subscribe if you care to do that. And I guess I'll see you guys next time.